Good morning and welcome to the Video Games and Good Conversation podcast. I am your host Zorvax and today is February 11th, 2019. Today I really wanted to talk about MMORPGs and kind of where they're at right now, like where I feel that they're at, and just kind of my history with the genre as a whole and kind of my hopes for the future and where I'm really hoping that things go. So, me personally, I've been playing MMORPGs for about 15 years now or so. Funny enough, I actually started playing MMOs with a MMO FPS, first-person shooter, called PlanetSide. I was only about maybe 16 at the time when I found this game. I actually met one of my now best friends that I've known since then at the game store, and he talked me into buying it and trying it out, and that's a huge topic of conversation because I loved PlanetSide and the whole concept of an MMO FPS, but PlanetSide 2 didn't end up being really what I expected it to be, so that's neither here nor there, but that was kind of what got me into playing those types of games, and of course it led me to trying my first MMORPG, which was Lineage II. And if you haven't played Lineage 2 before, it is a Korean MMO, it started in Korea and it came to the West. And the first Lineage was like really big. I think it actually still is really big in Korea to this day. And Lineage 2 still exists if you look it up. It's not really anything like it was back when I started playing, but it still does exist and it is free to play, so if you wanted to check that out. But I started with Lineage 2, and that of course came out a little bit before World of Warcraft, which kind of changed the whole landscape of what MMOs were to the general public, because before World of Warcraft, there really wasn't a big spotlight on MMOs in general. There was a lot of pretty big releases before WoW, but it still was more of a niche genre versus, you know, the games that your average gamer was playing. So I got in with Lineage 2 and of course World of Warcraft, and I played from that point until now pretty much every MMO that came out. I mean, I tried City of Heroes, I tried EverQuest 2, Dark Age of Camelot, even Ultima Online, which goes back before most of these other ones that I've talked about, if not all of them. But I've tried out Star Wars Galaxies, which, you know, looking back now, I wish I would have gave that game more of a chance, because there doesn't seem to really be anything out these days that even competes with what that was. But Final Fantasy 11 Online, I actually made a video, God, it's already been about a year, about me really trying that for the first time about a year and a half or so ago. Because another game I tried once back in its heyday, never really gave it a big chance, and I tried it now, and I actually really, really enjoyed it and got into it a lot. And if it weren't for the fact that it still requires an active subscription, you know, monthly paid subscription, I would probably play it because I really, really enjoyed it. But, and currently I still play World of Warcraft, and I play Final Fantasy 14 online as well. I play both of them, as you can imagine, fairly casually these days. Back with World of Warcraft, when it was newer, vanilla, Burning Crusade through Wrath of the Lich King, I did my fair share of raiding and like endgame content and all that, but anymore I play more casually with my my time schedule and time restrictions. But I think I got off on a big ramble there, which is, you know, really what I'm kind of aiming for with this podcast. I really don't want it to be anything too formal or, you know, fact driven, let's say. I really just want it to be about, good conversation. So anyway, kind of what I wanted to talk about today was MMOs are in a really weird spot right now where they have been on a decline. Let's not sugarcoat it or try to pretend like they're not. As we know, with World of Warcraft bringing such a big spotlight to the genre and bringing in so much money, everybody wanted to try their hand at making their own, which is why we saw that huge wave of MMOs that were WoW clones or like really close to WoW clones, and they all kind of copied the same. And of course, we all know that WoW didn't invent a lot of these things. They copied a lot of that from EverQuest and whatnot, but that's neither here nor there. Everybody saw what WoW had and what WoW was doing, and they're like, man, I want a piece of that. And we started seeing just this flood of new MMORPGs coming out. And well, as we sit here now in 2019, we see most of those games either have closed or are free to play, and some of them did find their spot within the genre space, and they're doing okay for themselves. Some of them actually even seemed to do better once they went free to play, and it fit them really well. But the thing about it is, there was so many games that came out, and I'm gonna spotlight a few of them that I personally enjoyed and kind of wish had went a little differently. One of which is Warhammer Online. If you remember that game, it came out. Sheesh, it's been a while, and I don't honestly remember exactly when it came out. But it was in the aftermath of WoW, and it was a game that I was looking forward to playing. Like, I really was excited about it because I was a fan of Warhammer in general, and I played some other Warhammer games like the Dawn of War real-time strategy games and things like that, and I always really enjoyed Warhammer lore, so I was really excited about it. And when it came out, it had a lot of problems. Not gonna lie about that. Like, it was very buggy. There were a lot of issues with class balance, and the game was very heavily influenced by PvP or RVRs, what they call it, realm versus realm combat. But it was so badly balanced that the RVR was really a nightmare for the most part, and a lot of people didn't even want to level past like the first bracket, which was like the level 10 solo bracket, I think 10 to 19 or 10 to 15, something like that. But most people didn't even want to go past that because it was just so badly balanced and things were so out of whack. So I really wish that they had done a better job with that game, because I played it on release, and I think I got into the 30s before I stopped playing, and I really hated that the game went that way, because it had a good concept. Obviously, Warhammer, story-wise, lore-wise, is one of the absolute best like worlds to have a game in, because there's so much story, there's so many epic characters, there's so many cool, systems and class concepts and all these other things, that it really could be an amazing MMO, whether you go with the classic like that one, or you go Warhammer 40k, which they were supposedly making a Warhammer 40k MMO, and I think it turned into some kind of like weird arena style shooter or something. I don't even know like what happened with that game, but I was actually pretty excited about 40k MMO, and never really happened. So, but yeah, I really had wished that Warhammer would have worked out, because it was a lot of fun when it did work, and I think had it been in better hands, I don't know if that's really on Mythic or if it's more on EA as the publisher, because we all know how publishers can kind of get their hands in things and make decisions that are not best for the game overall, because they're thinking of the business side of things and all that. But yeah, so anyway, so Warhammer was a game that came and went. It closed down years back now, and there has been a few people that have tried to keep it alive. I think there's a few private servers out there that are still running for people who want to play it. I tried one out once, and it was really fun to relive that game for a little while, but it wasn't the same, obviously. It never is. But so I guess the point that I'm trying to get out is with Warhammer and WildStar and all these games that have now come and gone, it seemed like the idea of just making another MMO that was very similar to what had already been done, whether you want to say it was World of Warcraft or EverQuest or whatever, just wasn't working anymore. Like, people wanted something that was new and different and wasn't doing the exact same thing that everyone had been doing. And there's some that have survived past this. I mean, really, if you look at it, like Final Fantasy XIV is a good example. It plays similarly to the other ones. It's, hotbar, tab targeting, it has a lot of the same systems. The combat is very similar, but the game is just so well done. The story is so good. The game is very polished. There's a lot of really good things about the game that make it just, I mean, I don't want to just go out and say better, but really it must be better in a lot of ways that it is still so successful as one of the only few remaining subscription-based MMOs that are surviving. So, where was I going with that? So I mean, like, people wanted things different than what we had already been playing, and I think that there are some companies out there who are trying to do that. I know Ashes of Creation has a lot of things planned that sound really good. I don't know if they're going to be able to actually pull them off like they're hoping to. They have a lot of really cool systems in place, and like a living world that is directly affected by the players, and all these cool things that developers like to talk about, but sometimes don't always end up being as good as they say. And I was a little concerned as of late with their whole Battle Royale demo thing that they were doing. I'm really not sure what that was about. I'm hoping it was just a way for them to test the game with a bunch of people playing on it, because I'm kind of over the whole Battle Royale phase that gaming is in right now. I haven't tried Apex Legends out yet, so I can't say that might be a good one. I've heard good things, but I'm kind of over hearing about those games and playing those games. So, not really sure what Ashes of Creation was doing with that, but I'm still going to try it out when it comes out and see what it is. And there's also Camelot Unchained, which I'm excited to try out, because I was a pretty big fan of Dark Age of Camelot. I didn't play it until it had already been out for a while, but I really enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed the PvP. It was really cool the way they did the 3 realm, because in Dark Age of Camelot there was 3 factions. So that was an interesting concept, and I enjoyed a lot of the classes and stuff I played. And one thing that I really enjoyed that a lot of games don't really do anymore is that the factions had different classes. So like, and Lineage kind of did this too. When you play most MMOs, of whether you play, WoW or Final Fantasy XIV or whatever, you make a race and then you pick a class. But the classes are the same for every race. So whether you play, in WoW, if you play an orc or a human or, a dwarf, whatever, if you play a warrior, you are the same as any other race who also plays a warrior. There's no differences besides your racial abilities, which are for your race, so it doesn't matter what class you play. But in games like Dark Age of Camelot or Lineage, for instance, your race made a difference in what your class was. So I'm more familiar with Lineage still to this day than I am DAOC, so I'm going to use that as a reference instead. But when you played Lineage and you picked your race, that made the decision on what kind of character you were going to make. So, whereas most races had a tank class per se, a knight class, every race's was different. So the humans had, you started off as just a human fighter, and then you moved to a human knight. And then when you got to level 40, you could make the choice between either a paladin or a dark avenger, which was, you know, everyone pretty much knows what a paladin is, and a dark avenger was kind of the opposite of that. But then if you played, say, an elf instead, you would make a knight, and then you would become what was called a temple knight. And while they were kind of similar to the human knight as far as, you know, heavy armor, sword and shield style tank, you had completely different abilities than the other tank was. So like, whereas the human knight would have like a shield stun and, you know, a panther pet, or, you know, this or that or the other thing, the elf knight on the other hand had these like cubic things, which were kind of mini pets that gave you buffs or gave you heals or did, you know, other things. And then like the dark elf tank had life drains and curses and, you know, things like that. So depending on what race you played affected your class, and I always thought that made each class a little more unique, because even though you might both be tanks, you might both be able to go and, you know, tank a raid or whatever else, you were going to have different strengths and different weaknesses than somebody of another race. And of course they had the differences in their base stats, you know, strength and health points and all those kind of things, but most MMOs really do that anyway. I really like that the classes were different as far as their active abilities and how they played, so that if you made both, it actually felt like you were playing something different rather than just playing the same thing. And I think that most games don't do that anymore, and it's really kind of a bummer. I mean, I understand that it's harder to balance something like that because you end up with so many more classes. I think Lineage ended up having like 30 something different classes because of that, which is awfully hard to balance. But I think the way they did it was actually really good, because the classes were similar enough that it was easier to balance than if they were totally and completely different, you know, like archetypes or whatever. So I think that's a pretty good compromise and a good way to do it. But that being said, you know, I think going back to the original point of just needing change, needing evolution in the genre, not just doing the same thing that we've seen, because I think everyone's made it pretty clear that they don't want more of just the same, and that's why when these new games all came and went, you know, well, they went because people were like, this feels like the same thing I've already been doing for years, and I'm not going to give up the 5 years, the 10 years, whatever that I've already invested in this game to play something that's very similar and doesn't, you know, really do anything for me. Like, I can keep all the progress and all the achievements and all the items and whatever else that I have in this game, instead of having to start from scratch on a new game that's really not that different. So, like, I get that, and I think that's why I still play the games that I play, because I don't want to give up everything that I've done for a game that doesn't wow me, doesn't give me that sense of wonder. And, like, you know, it's really hard to do that. Like, I understand back when I got into like Lineage and World of Warcraft, it was a completely new experience for me. So like everything was new and shiny, and like every time you came to a new area in the game, you were blown away by like, oh man, look at that building, look at these, you know, these ruins, look at this cool, you know, monster that I just found. Everything was new and exciting, and it made you feel like you were on this epic adventure. And now it's really hard, at least for me personally, to get that feeling from any of these newer games that have come out. And I know, part of that does, I guess, come with me just getting older and having played so many games. But I don't know. I think that some developers just need to take a few more risks in what they're doing, and I really would like to see somebody do a true sandbox MMO like Star Wars Galaxies, which is something I mentioned earlier. I never gave Galaxies much of a chance when I tried it because it really was confusing. I tried it before they did all the changes to it, where I guess they made they made it more like WoW in the end, which a lot of people didn't like, and a lot of people think is what led to it being canceled. But I tried it back when it was true sandbox, when you made a character and you didn't pick like a starting class or whatever. You just kind of made a character, and you had to. It was whatever you did increased your ability to do that. So like if you wanted to be, a bounty hunter that used blasters, you had to get your hands on a blaster and you had to go out and use it, and you had to get better at that. If you wanted to be, a dancer, you had to dance and you had to do it to get better at it, and so on and so forth. And I have never to this day played another game like that. And I thought it was really an interesting concept. Again, back then, I didn't understand it. It was foreign to me, and I really didn't have anybody that I knew that played it to kind of make me understand what it was like. But looking back now, it would be really awesome to have a game like that where you start out and you can do everything. It just is a matter of putting the time into actually doing it to get better at it. And I think that's actually part of what I like about Final Fantasy XIV, is that you can do all of the jobs available on a single character. Like, there's no, one class, one job, whatever per character, and you have to make another character if you want to try the other ones out. You can literally do every class, every job, every crafting class, whatever, on a single character. And I really like that, and it's kind of close to what Star Wars did, but more simplified, more in the vein of what MMOs are currently. And also a lot of the problem, I think, today really has to do with communities, and rather the lack of a lot of communities in games. A lot of people in part have really kind of put that blame on the developers, because take World of Warcraft for example. Like, a lot of the community that we had back in, say, vanilla was due to the fact that if you wanted to do, a dungeon or an elite quest or a raid or whatever else, you had to have help to do that. And there were no tools in game at the time that assisted you in finding people. If you wanted to do a dungeon, you had to go to the big city and find a group for yourself. You had to yell in, local chat saying that you were looking for a group to do this dungeon or that dungeon or this raid. Well, really, back then, if you wanted to do a raid, you had to be in a good guild who did raids. But either way, like, you had to interact and play with the people on your server. And as time went on, they introduced like the group finder. So instead of having to yell for a group and spend sometimes an hour or more finding a group, you could just hit a button and you'd queue up with random players from any server on your your shard or whatever, and you could do the dungeon. And it would take sometimes still up to 30 minutes in wait time depending on your class, but it was a surefire way to do it. And then later on they introduced Raid Finder, looking for raid, so you could do raid content without having a guild or a group of friends or whatever, you same thing. You queue up, it matches you with other players from other servers, and you do it. And at the time, it seemed like a really great thing because, like, oh, you know, if I don't have the ability to do these things, now I can do them. But it came at the cost where that's what everyone started doing, and now nobody was communicating with anybody on their server anymore. So, like right now, if I'm playing World of Warcraft, I get on my server, I couldn't tell you really anybody on my server. Like, besides the people that I personally know, I don't know anybody on the server. Like, back in vanilla Burning Crusade, whatever, you knew other people on, you know, whether you grouped with them, whether you knew them because they were one of the best raiding guilds and they had the best gear, or, you know, you met them while questing, whatever the case is, there was a more sense of community back then than there is today, because you don't need to find people to do things anymore. You can do everything at a click of a button. Even if you're looking to do quests, there's a group finder tool built into the game to just find people to do things with that aren't on your server. So even if you do happen to find somebody that you have a great time doing that activity with, chances are they're not even on your server. And, you know, granted, anymore, WoW they've done a good job at making it to where you can do almost anything with people on other servers. So that's kind of alleviates some of it. But nothing, I don't think, will bring back that feeling of just going to a major city and seeing, you know, 10 people that you've seen out questing, or people that you've, you know, seen out like at a big PvP battle or whatever. So I really do believe that a sense of community is a big thing that a lot of these games are missing, and I don't know that anybody's really doing anything to bring that back. Again, Ashes of Creation, I'm not I'm not trying to build that game up, because I really don't, like, I'm not even getting my hopes up about it because I've been burned way too many times. But with the way that they're saying that's going to be like a living game world, and that players are going to impact the game world and all that, like, it seems that means you'll have more of that sense of community, because you'll be, you know, you and the other players will directly impact the game world. But to me, there's not enough information out there right now to really know for sure that that's going to be the case. So, not putting all my eggs in that basket just yet. So I know I've kind of rambled on for a while now, but I guess I'll close this up by just saying, if you're looking for an MMO to play right now, say you don't have any history with any games and you're just looking for something fun to play, I definitely would recommend Final Fantasy XIV. Actually, at the time of recording this, if you have Amazon Prime, Twitch Prime, there's a free starter edition where you get I think it's the base game and 30 days of playtime for free with Final Fantasy XIV, and you can play as much as you want, basically up to the 30 days, and then you can continue subscription, get the expansions, whatever. So I would definitely recommend that. WoW is still a really good game. I know everybody's kind of hating on it right now because of the direction that things have taken in the last year plus, but it still is a good solid game, and you can play that for free. I think it's up to level 20, so you can try that out. And I think the way they have it now with WoW is if you subscribe, you get access to like all the content up to the current expansion, I think, and it's only like the current expansion that you have to buy, so that's a pretty good deal. And those are your two big pay-to-play MMOs. If you're looking for like a buy-to-play MMO, one where you do the base purchase but there's no monthly subscription, Guild Wars 2, still a really good option. I have that. I haven't played it in a while, but it is a really, really solid game. It's got a lot of really good features. It's really polished and nice. I would definitely recommend that. Elder Scrolls Online is another one. A very, very good game, very polished. And as far as I know, you pay for the base game and there's no subscription fee or anything like that. So that's a good option. As far as straight up free to play ones, I honestly don't really play a lot of those anymore. So I have a hard time really recommending one. I've tried Terra, and it's pretty good. It's more of like an action MMO in the style of combat and everything, but it is very well done and polished for a free-to-play MMO. Lineage II is still out there. It's an older game, and it's a very different kind of game, so I don't know that I would really recommend that if you don't have a history with it. And then there's still like Rift, I believe, is completely free to play now. I think it's more on the end of free to play, but if you really want to do anything, you're going to end up having to cough up some money kind of free to play. So I don't really know how much I could recommend trying that, but it's another option. But yeah, there's more than enough free to play MMOs out there. If you just Google free to play MMO, you'll find a huge long list and a lot of different options. But if you're looking for quality, if you're looking for polish, you're gonna have to either pay an entry fee or pay a subscription, more or less. So that's something to think about. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say for this episode. I'm really just trying to have a good time with this. I mean, this is really just about, talking with you guys. I'd love to hear from you guys. The best way really to get in touch with me is just send me a tweet. I'm Zorvax on Twitter. Send me a direct message if you want, or you can just at me, send a tweet at me and say, hey, listen to the podcast and I wanted to ask you this, or I wanted to comment this, or whatever, and I will definitely get back with you. I'd love to hear from everybody. So thank you again for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I have several ideas coming for the future episodes, and I'm looking for right now to do a release schedule of about one episode per week. I don't know what day. I haven't really nailed down a good day for releases yet, so it might be a little erratic for the time being, but I'm definitely aiming for right now to do at least one episode per week. So if you can follow it or subscribe to it, I'm brand new to podcasting, so I'm not honestly really sure how all that stuff works. So either, bookmark it, save it, however you're listening. I'm sure there's some kind of a way to do that. So if you're enjoying it, I'd appreciate it. I'd love to have you back. I'd love to hear your questions or comments, and that's it. Again, my name is Zorvax, and I hope you guys have a great day.